Hi, I'm Allison, a therapist in Davidson, North Carolina. Today I want to talk about clear, congruent conversations, even when we're having conflict. When I'm talking about congruency, we're talking about how your insides match your outsides. How honest are we being about how we're feeling? How regulated can we stay in a tough conversation? I've learned a lot about this in working with horses through equine therapy and offering this to couples, families, and individuals for figuring out what's our style of communication and how can we do it in a more clear, effective, and honest way. Often when we're talking about tough conversations, we might be talking about conflict. Conflict is an inherent part of human nature. We sometimes disagree with people, whether it's a family member, a friend, a coworker. And it's important to think about what is our relationship to conflict? How can we feel safe in conflict? Here are a few strategies that may be helpful to think about. The Gottman Institute, which studies long-lasting marriages and relationships, talks about the Four Horsemen. These are the 4 things to avoid in conflict that erode away the trust in the relationship. The first is criticism. Being critical of ourselves or others, sharp jabs, and the antidote to it is a gentle startup. Being able to start the conversation from a low amount of pressure and to use I feel statements. I feel about this because, or it would feel really good for me if we did more of this. Gentle startups. The second is contempt. Contempt is when we attack the personal nature of somebody. It can sound a lot like judgment, and it can sound pretty hopeless too, as if this is how it's always been in our relationship and it's never going to change. The antidote to contempt is building out a culture of appreciation, acknowledging the hard parts, but still developing a sense of gratitude. The third is defensiveness. Blame defense can be a dynamic that's very easy to roll into and sometimes can be interlaced with criticism. When somebody feels attacked in a conversation, the impulse is to put our defense up and defend all the ways that they're not correct in this statement. The antidote to that is responsibility and accountability. Take agency and accountability for your roles in creating the dynamic and allow others to do the same. The fourth horseman of the apocalypse, as the Gottmans call it, is stonewalling. This one's a tough one because it can feel really stoic. Like, I'm going to shut you out so that I don't say the wrong thing or engage in any of the other 3 horsemen. But it can also be really hurtful. This is like the cold shoulder, icing people out, not having clear, congruent conversation, and not expressing what you're feeling on the inside. The antidote to stonewalling is physiological self-soothing. And you can check out several of the other videos on my YouTube page to be able to access tools to regulate your nervous system so that you can have this clear communication. It's totally okay to take a time out from a moment of conflict, to ask for 10 or 15 or an entire evening of a break from the conversation. Just make sure you agree upon a time to come back and have that communication. One of the things that we talk about at the farm are levels of pressure. Pressure is an inherent part of day-to-day life. If my dog barks in the morning because he wants breakfast, that's pressure. If I feel internally my bladder being full when I wake up in the morning, that's pressure. If I do nothing to respond to it, it will slowly increase until I take action, and then it releases. Pressure is a law of nature. It just is. It's not good or bad. We want to think about being able to use pressure effectively in our life. And to do this, I think about 2 dials. We have the internal dial, which is what we're sensing, feeling internally. And then we have the external dial, which is the volume with which we project ourselves out into the world. And this can happen through our voice and through our body language. Karen Purvis talks about TVC, total voice control, or tone, volume, cadence. You've probably been in a conflict or a tough conversation at some point where somebody starts to escalate and you can hear their voice changing and it's all in their voice and you know that they're saying something internally, even if they're not saying it with their words. This is the music that goes with the lyrics. We want to make sure that our music and lyrics are blending together, that we're using appropriate amounts of energy and pressure to have clear communication, which means that these two dials start working together rather than them working apart. So, for example, passive-aggressive energy tends to look like that internal dial's turned all the way down, or all the way up, like you are ramping up, you are frustrated and not communicating it. So shut down, quiet, and we stay quiet, 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 and then it explodes or implodes, right? It causes a big, unpredictable, jack-in-the-box energy where everything was pushed down and then it comes up in a big way. Not always great for effective communication. The other thing that can happen is these two things ramp up really fast without any titration between. That's kind of going like 0 to 60. And that can look like really aggressive communication. And you're dysregulated and your tone, volume, cadence is all out of whack and really loud and cranked up. Have you ever had the TV on super, super loud unexpectedly? Like you turn it on and it's at the highest level and suddenly you just feel whoa, bombarded. That's what that can feel like on the receiving end of inappropriate pressure. When we talk about making requests, whether at the farm with the horses or in our interpersonal relationships, a nice principle to follow is always starting with the least amount of pressure and building up. Now, this works when the request is fair, appropriate, and kind, right? So when we start with the least amount of pressure, we may lift to a 1, 2, 3. As soon as we get the response we're looking for, we drop that pressure, we release. The reward is in the release. We also are intentional to not move the finish line. If you clearly ask somebody to take the trash out, but what you meant to say was take the trash out and clean out the garbage and wash the outside of the trash bin, then that's not necessarily fair to the person that we're making the request of. We're not expecting our partners, our friends, our peers, our kids to be mind readers. So making sure that it's a fair, clear request, we build our energy, we release when we get a response, and we're not moving that finish line. Another thing to take into consideration with clear, congruent communication is always holding a balance of self, other, and environment and context. How I ask somebody to pass the popcorn is going to be really different in a quiet movie theater than a crowded concert in the middle of a set. I might need to start with a louder bass energy at a concert because of the environment than I do at the movie theater. We're always balancing this intersection of self, other, and environment. So making sure that you're holding an awareness not only of your needs in the relationship, but also the other person that you're in a dynamic and a dance of conversation with, as well as the context. I'm curious to hear from y'all in the comments what other communication skills and nuggets of wisdom have landed for you over the course of your life as you navigate relational awareness in all of your relationships. Please drop a comment with anything that's been helpful for you so that we can build a culture and a community of people boosting each other up with wisdom and guidance. If you found this video helpful, please make sure to like and subscribe to this page so you can stay up to date on all of my latest videos. Thank you. Namaste.